All right, how we doing out there? Everybody good tonight? All right, all right. Yo, I don't know if you know this, but I'm going to throw out a date. April 11th, 2019. Does anybody have any clue what that date signifies? The last time we were in this room for a Real Estate Luminaries event, we had Hamid Mogadon from Prologis here. So we are so happy to be back together as a family and as a community. My name is Matt Cypher. I'm the director of the Steer Center for Global Real Estate. The Atara Those are all my students trying to get participation points right now, by the way. But director of the Steer Center and the Atara Kaufman professor of the practice. So couldn't be more happy to be here today. So thankful to have everybody here, our guests, which I'm going to introduce here in a bit. We have a great agenda here for us tonight. This event is always, for me anyway, this part is the fun. I have a board meeting before this that's a lot of work, right? But coming in here, this is where we have a good time. And then when we're done with this, we're going to have drinks, which is when we're really going to have a good time. So I want to thank, as we get started here, our sponsor, JLL, Jones Lang LaSalle, Steve Conley, Matt Nicholson. Wouldn't be able to do this stuff without you all. So thank you very much for your commitment. Both Hoyas, by the way, and appreciative of them being here. The cocktail reception, my brain is already thinking about cocktails, sponsored by the Cytex Group. Brian Milberg is around here somewhere, who certainly loves a good cocktail reception. But let's get started here, okay? So I have a bias. I'm not a huge fan of reading lengthy bios. You all have the program, so I'm gonna truncate all these things. But I'm going to invite Hrish Lotlikar to the far seat right there. And by the way, we were very strategic in positioning Hrish as the first speaker. We were talking about it in the back because the students are very interested in seeing Hrish and hearing from Hrish. Now, I don't know if the students have heard this yet, and I don't know if Max McCool is in the audience, but Hrish said that he wants to go to the Tombs, and Max is going to take him there. So, and he's serious about that, by the way. So he's looking forward to that. We have Hrish Lotlikar here as the CEO, co-founder of SuperWorld, right? So, you know, I have plenty of friends in the audience here tonight that sort of crinkle their forehead when we bring up the things like the Metaverse and virtual real estate, and maybe I do too, but I think as a Center for Real Estate, we have to have an opinion as to what we think about it, right? So I, over the last handful of months, have been really getting involved in the virtual real estate world and sort of crypto generally, and I said we got to have somebody come to Georgetown and talk about this. So we have Hrish here, who described himself as a global nomad as in terms of where he's from, and it's ironic that he runs a company called SuperWorld in some respects because he doesn't think about location as one spot. It's all over the place. But originally born in India, moved to the United States at 2.5, and went to Houston, went to Rice for college. But his wife, who is Russian, and his two kids, ages 6 and 2, live all over the world. They pick a different place and they go there. His 6-year-old has lived in 18 countries. So his background is extensive. It's a lot of stuff I don't understand, venture capital, principally. But where I get excited and interested is what he's done in the creation of this super world, this metaverse, this virtual world. And the idea here is, I heard it once described that a great idea for a podcast is explain it to me like I'm 5, right? And so today, I told him he was using a bunch of words I didn't understand. I said, man, you got to explain it to me like I'm 5 here. So can you join me in welcoming Hrish Lotlikar to Georgetown? Great. All right, Hrish. So one of the things I like to do when we get started with these kinds of things is try to personalize, the individual. So, you're from India, but, maybe give us a little bit of your background and just sort of where you're from, what you do, those sorts of things. I know that's the question you don't like in terms of where you're from, but,
Sure. No, happy to. It's a pleasure to be here. Go Hoyas. I'm excited to be here. I've been here in a long time. You have such a beautiful campus, and thanks again for having me. I grew up in Houston, went to Rice University, grad school in Illinois. Started off my career in management consulting, but then did investment banking. Actually started off in real estate investment banking of all places at UBS Investment Bank in New York. I didn't know at the time that I would help build the category of virtual real estate, but it's funny how life works out that way. Ended up doing investment banking at UBS and HSBC. Ended up in venture capital in New York. I had a crazy idea about 12 years ago. I have a lot of crazy ideas, obviously, as you can see, but I had this idea, wouldn't it be cool to start a venture capital fund somewhere in the emerging markets? Went out to Eastern Europe about 12 years ago, traveled around the whole region, ended up starting a venture capital fund in Ukraine, backed by a big investor named Viktor Pinchuk out there, and then was early at a platform called TopTal, which is backed by Andreessen Horowitz. It's a global talent platform, and then previously to SuperWorld started Rogue Initiative Studios, which is a film, television, gaming, and virtual reality studio in Hollywood. My co-founder produced Call of Duty, Modern Warfare series, and Ghost. My partner is Michael Bay, the action director. He's known for big Hollywood, action franchises. And really, that's what got us to where we are now at SuperWorld.
All right, so we're going to go to SuperWorld here, but
Yeah.
again, explain it to me like I'm
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
What is Web3?
Web3 is really the third kind of iteration of the web. The first iteration, Web 1, is where you were reading information, right? Websites were purely informational. Web 2 was read-write, where you could actually, again, interact with the website, create content. Everything you think of at the web now is Web 2. Web 3 is really read, write, and own. So now we've moved into these more virtual living settings. You should start thinking about owning some of those assets that you're involved in. Web 2, the issue with it is all of that time that you're spending on it is owned by centralized parties. Web 3 really opens up the way for all of us to identify and understand that all of the time that we spend in these virtual environments, and we all recognize we're doing more of that, what if you could start owning those assets and being a key stakeholder in those platforms that you're involved in? And that's what Web3 really ushers.
So could you give me an example company of Web 2 and an example company of Web 3?
Sure. So, Web 2, Facebook, Twitter, any of the companies that you think of in the social media space, Airbnb, you name it. Every company that you probably are thinking about is a Web 2 company. Web 3 companies are companies in this space. SuperWorld's one example of that, but Sandbox is a company that everyone can own. Filecoin is a storage company, so if you can get AWS for storage, Filecoin is a Web 3 version of that. So anything you can do in Web 2 utilizing blockchain, you can, again, decentralize. And so decentralization is a big core component of Web 3.
Now, is it fair to say the non-fungible tokens, the NFTs, is a Web 3 concept? Is that a fair statement?
That's right, yeah.
So can explain an NFT again, just...
Sure. So the concept of fungibility, right? So when we think of fungibility, it's really simple. It's whatever you have and whatever I have. If you have one of those and I have one of those, so let's say we're talking about Bitcoin, right? If you have one Bitcoin and I have one Bitcoin, those are fungible, right? So you sell yours and I sell mine, we're going to get the same amount of fiat currency if we sell at the same time. That's fungibility. Non-fungibility is where one item and the other item aren't equal. They're unique. And what's the beautiful thing about the world is if we look around, everything is non-fungible, right? Even every one of these chairs, even though they all are identical, one might have a scratch on it, right? It might be worth much less than the other one that isn't as worn, right? And so everything around us is non-fungible, and all this technology does is it allows us to digitize the authenticity and the information and programmatically be able to trade that. So you can really ease the transactional cost of being able to understand what you're buying and be able to trade with others. And so it's kind of digitizing the ability to digitize the world and ownership of the world around you. And that's the power of non-fungible tokens.
So like a baseball card, for instance, would be
Exactly.
a perfect example.
Exactly.
All right, so explain the metaverse to me.
Yeah. So the metaverse is a concept where we are, again, taking whatever you're doing in your real life and whatever you're doing virtually, and we're bringing those two concepts together. And so the metaverse kind of brings together a number of technologies, from immersive technologies like AR and VR, MR, blockchain technologies where you can actually own these environments around us, artificial intelligence, where you could have a contextual understanding of these environments. And really is this kind of, the next iteration of the internet, where, again, utilizing Web3, you can own these environments where you're spending more time. And so, again, the metaverse is a way of kind of thinking of this online, offline interface that really, again, interacts with and interfaces with all parts of your life, wherever you live, work, play, on a global level in a persistent basis.
So then walk me into a virtual world here for a minute. We went from Web3 to Metaverse to virtual world.
Right. So again, what we're building at SuperWorld is an example of a virtual world. SuperWorld specifically is built on top of the real world. So it's all around us. You have a world, I have a world. There's an infinite number of filters on the world. So if I come to Georgetown or New York or Tokyo or LA, if I go to any Hilton hotel, you could say, Hrish, why don't you check out Hilton's world? And I could walk around and I could see what they want me to see. And I can interact with that content, and I could buy things, and I could, again, activate different benefits because I'm a frequent traveler of Hilton. I could see what Georgetown wants me to see. And if I'm an alum, I can go into all of the places and connect with people and places that Georgetown really has connections to all over the world. And so again, there's an infinite number of filters. And at SuperWorld, what we've done is we've divided the surface of the Earth into 64 billion properties. Each property covers a city block of land. It's a digital asset. And if you own that property, again, you're a key stakeholder in the platform. That's what Web3 is about, right? And so you can actually own the spaces around you. You become a key stakeholder, and you're also able to benefit from all of the monetization that will happen there: advertising, e-commerce, digital commerce, data, analytics, and gaming. And you can create value as well from all of your activities. And so if you think of the concept of Pokemon Go, which a lot of people saw that as a game, that was the fastest game in history to hit $1 billion in revenue. They did it in 7 months, right? It's a company called Niantic. What if you could own those places? What if you could be a part of that spatial environment? So if we all assume that we're all moving to a spatial computing environment, the opportunity to own those places and be able to, all of us, build this world together is what virtual worlds are all about. And some of them are on top of the real world, like SuperWorld. There's other worlds like Sandbox, which is also a very close connection to us at SuperWorld. We're very, very linked, but in many ways. But the point is that that world is also doing some amazing things. And when you get into one virtual world, you can go to other virtual worlds or other platforms. And so if you think of the metaverse, you can think of that as like the internet, and these virtual worlds as websites. And what we're doing in the Web3 world is we're allowing easy transportability of assets. And so when you get an asset from one world, the point is you want to bring it to another world or another platform. And that was something that wasn't possible in Web 2, but that's going to change in Web 3.
So you said something, I was trying to find a pen and I forgot where it was, but if you believe in computer spatiality or something like that, did I get that right?
Spatial computing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, it just means that, again, if you believe that the form factor of computing is going to go from looking at a laptop or looking at your mobile phone to an environment where you're going to put on a pair of glasses or a headset that's going to provide you with the ability to look at data, all types of data, it could be any type of content, 3D, 2D, audio, anything, in real-world environments. And really, if you look at what's happening on the virtual reality side with investments by Facebook and Oculus, if you see what's happening with Niantic, this is a great example, and they've done some amazing work with Pokemon Go. And what we thought about is if you liked Pokemon Go, but you weren't into gaming, but you were into travel, you were into staying at amazing hotels, you were into education, you were into entertainment, you're into music, you can access all of that content, and it's locational in nature. And that's how we used to live before. It's very native to us, right? I mean, if you think about it, 25 years ago, or actually probably 35 years ago, before we really kind of were walking around with these devices or even pulling up a laptop, if you were walking down the street, you wanted to know what to do, you'd probably listen for the music, right? And you'd go that direction, or you'd go to a location where you knew something was going on. And so this type of understanding of your spatial environment is very native to us as humans, and we're going back to that thanks to these technologies. And so, a lot of people think this means you're going into a totally virtual world and getting an avatar and you're going to play a video game. But at SuperWorld, we don't believe that. We believe that we can bring these technologies to your real life to enhance your real life, and then additionally, we believe that we can actually, using these technologies, actually improve the world and improve humanity. And there's a lot of ways that we're already doing that.
Oh boy. So I think about like the iPhone moment with Apple, right? And so when I've talked to people about this, they talk about Apple is working on something and it's AR related that is going to be the iPhone moment for this. And it's hard for us to get our heads around what that is. But basically it's is it a wearable? Is it something that then, again, you're walking up the steps and you see like an ad there, or it's kind of like on the hockey game where they have the advertisements on the ice kind of thing when you're watching television. Is that so we thinking about this right? Because and in fairness too, I think some of us have the view that this is some dude sitting in his parents' basement with like goggles on, right? So this is in the world, and you're interacting with the physical world with an overlay of this virtual environment, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that whether you're talking about augmented reality, which is adding digital information to anywhere that you are, or you're talking about virtual reality, which is putting on a pair of goggles and going into a totally virtual environment, we're going to be utilizing these technologies to benefit our real lives. And whether that's, you're on Zoom calls now, but you want to, stop looking at videos and just be able to be somewhere in a room and be there with what's called presence. Presence is the term where that virtual environment and the real environment is indistinguishable. You feel like it's completely real. It feels very natural. We're getting there. And so the technology of utilizing immersive computing, the opportunity, I should say, of using that technology is what is going to be life-changing for us. And we've seen it in the last few years with COVID, how people have started understanding that maybe a little bit of virtuality, doing a Zoom call isn't a bad thing. It saves me from having to, wear any clothes or, get dressed or go on a commute or whatever it is, depending on, what you're doing. But the point is that, there are other aspects of life that you might want to be more physical or be physical present, right? And so you have that optionality. And that's what these technologies are doing. Back to the metaverse, right? You could be there physically. Someone else could be zooming in virtually, right? And they're virtually in this meeting. And that interplay of both of those things is the real essence and the very compelling aspect of why the metaverse is going to be very important, especially as it relates to real estate, right? Real property, virtual property, they're linked. In SuperWorld, they're right on top of each other. So I have tons of conversations with real world property developers who are wanting to bring this immersive technology to their real world properties so they can do their job, do the things that they're doing in the physical world with just seamless, frictionless ease.
Give me an example. I mean, so much of this that I struggle with is I can't put my finger on what a tangible example would be.
Sure. So, again, the NFT, which we talked about a bit ago, is really hit this, huge hype stage last year. And it's, again, a lot of people were like, is this a fad? And I hope I've cleared up that this is a very core technology, and that's what it is. And that use case of that technology, again, remember, anything can be an NFT. So you could think of a house, again, being represented by an NFT or any property, right? And if you can, again, understand the attributes and that's authenticated and I can make transactions very seamless, you could see that a property developer or an agent or broker, could, again, be able to very seamlessly, transact using that technology as opposed to the processes that are much more timely and centralized. And so you're saving costs, you're saving, these third parties that are taking margins on that transaction. So you can very directly kind of engage with your clients and customers. You can do that very seamlessly. And then, again, if you're talking about even discovery, like being able to see a property, being able to, actually understand the characteristics or the attributes of what you're buying, you can do that too in a very virtual way. And so the question becomes, if you're in the real estate business, does actually kind of doing more of these things more virtually actually, enable you to be much more optimized in a business sense for what you're trying to accomplish, which is, and maybe develop and buy and sell real estate.
So if I'm buying an affordable housing project, for instance, I could theoretically sit in my office, throw on my glasses, and go do a due diligence tour of the asset without ever leaving my building, is what you're saying, my office.
Yeah, or you could be there and you could access information that might not be as readily apparent, but the developer or the company that's involved in that process is providing that information in a locational, spatial type of format. And so again, we're able to do things a lot more seamlessly. I don't have to, even think about it. This information is presented, and to your point, I don't maybe not even have to go there. And if you're transacting globally and you're doing a lot of different properties, around the world, this is saving some major costs and making things a lot more efficient.
So I'm going to ask you an unfair question because I didn't prep you on it. But if you're Chris Nassetta right now, what would you be doing?
Well, I think that he's done an amazing job, and I think that there's so much opportunity as we think of the metaverse, and the opportunity in hospitality to utilize these technologies to give people an experience that enables them to have this even more engaged experience with your brand, with your hotels, in a way that enables them, maybe if they can't get there, to experience it before they get there, to when they are there, be able to, again, own things and be able to take things away from that experience that give them this further kind of stakeholder status. And I think we do that with loyalty programs already in the Web 2 world. But when you think of these technologies that are enabled here, being able to visualize something, own it, being able to resell it, there's a lot of business model innovation that can happen here too. And again, as a company that is world class and doing some things that I think are really revolutionizing the space, the opportunity to get in fast and really bring customers into this type of technology and engage them in this way, I think can be even more transformative here. And this is why, if you look at the numbers for the metaverse and you see the companies that are investing billions of dollars in this space, this is what they're excited about. Because when you can engage your customers in a way where they actually feel like they're owners and collaborators, right? So in SuperWorld, as an example, everyone can build SuperWorld. The whole world's available. You can buy any place, you can build anything you want. We can all build together. There's an infinite number of filters, and we all own it together, and the purpose is to, improve the world. And so that kind of concept, which is really Web 3, can be applied to any kind of business. I'll give you an example. We did an NFT with a luxury club in New York and Miami called Custom House. And what they started doing is selling NFT luxury, lifetime memberships to their club. And so what they did was they innovated their business model. Now you have customers who are buying these memberships, and then a few years later, they can sell them again. And so there's utility there. And what they've done is therefore innovated their model, allowed their customers to become part of that business in a way, because now they want the value to go up. And so you really engage with your customers in a very new way, and I think that's very powerful.
Love it. So if we have a group of undergraduate students here who throw together some money to buy one of the parcels, one of your city blocks in SuperWorld, what would they do with it? So we own it. So that's cool in the sense that we own this parcel in SuperWorld, but so what?
Yeah. So, the idea of SuperWorld is, again, we've created a virtual world on top of the real world where anyone can create, discover, and monetize anything anywhere. So you can create any type of content anywhere, accessible from anywhere, and monetizable in many ways. And so if you own real estate, I always tell people, first of all, I say, people always ask me, hey, Hrish, so where should I buy real estate? And I always say, you should buy places that you love, places that you have a connection to. And people always have this question mark, what's the metaverse? What are NFTs? What is AR, VR, AI? How does this apply to my life, right? My daily life. And the thing that we're doing is we're saying, SuperWorld's all about reality. And so what I tell people, and what people naturally do, which is great, is they think about places they spend time and where they have a business, where they go on vacation. Maybe the places they don't own in the real world, but they wish they could. And there's a lot of real world property buyers who buy the places they own in the real world. They buy the virtual layer over those places. And to answer your question, again, you can do anything you want at those places. And what you find is that depending on who the buyer is, so if the person's an artist, they're going to want to put artwork there. At Miami Art Week, Art Basel, we had artists who weren't even at Art Basel putting artwork in the convention center and different locations there, right? Accessible for anyone to see. And they could, literally put, works of art, whether physical or virtual, in those locations. If you're a musician, you might want to do a concert. If you're a hotel company, you might want to have an experience for someone to experience your hotel before they get there. Something they can take away from your hotel experience. If you're the government of Barbados, you're building an embassy. Barbados is building an embassy in SuperWorld, right? And so literally it depends on, who you are as an individual. You'll probably have better ideas than I can come up with. And our goal at SuperWorld is to give you the tools to do that. So, it's really a dialogue like this, and this is why I love these types of environments, is we all kind of build it together. And so you're going to have a lot more ideas of what we should build, and we all build it together. That's the beauty of it.
I was going to ask a question and it completely left me. But, I've been fumbling around with this a little bit, and it's complicated, right? And some of these interfaces are clunky. If you need to buy things, getting money into crypto, getting it moved around, getting it into the right coin is hard. And so when does the average person sort of interact with this? Because it's hard right now.
It is very hard. We're in the kind of the dial-up era of the internet. I don't know if you guys remember that, but you had to go online. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where we are with Web3, and even buying NFTs, or even doing more complex things like getting into decentralized finance, setting up a DAO, all of these other concepts that are still coming. And the thing that I would advise anyone here, if you're interested in the topic, it's a really good time to get in. It's a good time to learn. Everything, as everyone knows here in the real estate space, it starts one step at a time. And so once you kind of start learning some of these fundamentals, you get in and then you start building. And this is what we're seeing. I mean, SuperWorld, as an example, the thing that we've created is this gateway. So when you get a piece of real estate, you're like, okay, now what's the next step? I want to maybe get into AR. Maybe I want to create some NFTs and put them there. Maybe I want to, again, get into DeFi or get into other crypto or get into another virtual world. So again, it starts at one step at a time. But the other beauty of this is the technology is moving so fast that I would guarantee you in the next few years, a lot of the tech is going to be abstracted away. So you're going to buy a ticket and you're going to realize, oh wait, that was an NFT. And I have a wallet, and again, you're not going to think of it as a quote unquote wallet. Maybe you're going to think of it as your profile, and that's what you purchased. And so a lot of those benefits are going to be there. But it behooves everyone in here, I think, to again try to while we're early, jump in and get some of those fundamentals. Because this is like me telling you in the early '90s, like, hey, get a browser and start surfing the net. Same exact analogy.
I love it, man. I love it. I'm not. Somebody's going to say, Hrish, this concept of scarcity, right? it's made up space, Hrish.
Yeah.
You can go make more of it. So
Sure.
debunk that thought.
Well, it's true that if you're talking about a totally virtual type of environment, it's very plausible to create more totally virtual environments, whether you're talking about in the real world, someone else could create another world, right? Or if you're talking about a virtual environment, they could create more land virtually too. In SuperWorld's case, we are mapped on top of the real world. There's 64 billion properties, that's it, right? And if you buy one, that's it. It's an NFT, it covers the surface of the earth. Someone could create another SuperWorld. So that's, again, I think goes to your question. But the point is these are all communities, okay? If you think of Airbnb, if you think of Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, any of these websites from Web 2, the difference is that you didn't own those websites. In Georgetown, we were having a conversation about living in Georgetown and sharing stories about, that means a lot to people, where they grew up, where they have property, where they spend time. Now, if we're moving to virtual environments and you can own those places, if someone buys land in SuperWorld, okay, it's a community. SuperWorld stands for two things: empowering people and building a better world. That's what our community is about, right? And so if you buy land and you start owning real estate in SuperWorld, you've now kind of made a decision that that's a community that you believe in. It doesn't mean that you can't be a part of another community. You can. And at SuperWorld, we want to make it very open, again, back to the gateway, to go elsewhere. And we're very linked with literally every other virtual world, very, very, very much so. In terms of our relationships and partners. And so what we want to do is really create that way for you to have that interoperable experience where you can do things, you can spend time in a community that you love. You again are, quote unquote, buying these digital assets that you can buy and sell, and you're owning those. And that's a different experience than Web 2. Another question that's a corollary to that I always get is, hey, is this a winner-take-all market? Hey, is this really like this, race to become the biggest platform? That's how Web 2 worked, right? Because there's a centralized party that kind of owns a lot of this data. Web 3 is slightly different. You're in these communities, and these communities can get pretty large. Ethereum's a community, Bitcoin's a community, Solana's a community. If you guys are getting, if you're into crypto, you recognize this. And these communities are huge. And so you can get into a community that you love, and you can help grow it. So if you believe in something, Web3 enables you to really, again, get involved in that community. And SuperWorld's all about the real world. Again, I have 2 kids, and the last thing I want to do is build a world that sucks them into it. I'm about the real world, and that's the difference in what we're trying to do. It might sound ironic, but we've built a virtual world focused on your real life. That's what we're doing at SuperWorld.
So I love that, man, because I have an 11-year-old daughter that is in Roblox all the time, right? And so what I'm hearing you say is we're not building something for them to just go into a room on their laptop and that's all they do, right?
Yeah, not at all. There was a movie that came out called Social Dilemma. I don't know if you guys have seen that on Netflix. It's a movie about how we live in these algorithmic bubbles. What I click on, that's what I see. You click on something else, you see that. Soon enough, everyone hates each other, right? It's a movie about how we're all staring at our phones. We all go to lunch together. We probably stare at our phones 50 times during that lunch, and then probably 1,000 times during the day anyway. And then it's about kids being obsessed with Instagram and TikTok and Fortnite and Roblox and just being plugged in. You see a group of kids are all sitting there looking at their phones nowadays, right? They're not even playing something, they're all sitting together looking at their phones. And I don't want to do that. That's the last thing I want to do at SuperWorld, is build a world that sucks people into it. And so our focus is really, how can we bring people into the real world, do things in the real world? How can I get Nike to pay for you to go on a run? Can we do that with tokenomics? And we can. How can we, again, enable you to do the things you're passionate about? We call it passionware, right? And then again, collectively, how can we do things that are positive for the real world? Every time you buy a plot of land in SuperWorld, we plant trees in the real world. We're already partnered with the World Bank in the Caribbean. We're partnered with the United Nations and UNESCO. We brought together, just as an example, this is great, we brought together 2 tribes in the Amazon jungle 2 months, a month ago. They created digital art in the Amazon, viewable from anywhere in the world, to help people understand what's happening in the Amazon, right? With the Ukraine invasion that's happening right now, we're enabling people to see what's happening in Ukraine and put those images right next to their skylines. And so they can see and empathize with what's happening there and use Web3 technology to actually donate money through NFTs. And so, again, I think the focus on reality is what's important, and that's what we're all about.
Well, I think that's a key thing. And,
Yeah.
and just for fun here, and
Yeah.
so by the way, please tweet your questions at hashtag SteersGlobal, and that's what I'm looking at here. Talk about Snoop in the sandbox
Yeah.
as an example of scarcity.
Yeah, so again, we love Sandbox. We're very close to Sandbox, and they've built an amazing platform. And we're also very close to Snoop Outlier. He's a partner at Outlier Ventures. He's one of our investors as well.
Can you get Snoop here?
Yes. Snoop,
Hold on.
Snoop, I can put in a message to get Snoop here.
I love it. I'm serious,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. You know, I think he's a partner at Outlier,
Okay.
who's one of our investors, and he's also, again, very close to the Sandbox platform. And so the idea there is, again, you're talking about a virtual environment, which is, again, divided into blocks. And, depending on where those blocks are in that virtual environment, and if you're next to Snoop's block of land, your block of land, has, more value in that case. And so, the ability to, again, if you're thinking about a gaming environment, and we've all played, some games or video games in our lives, and imagine what if you could own some of those places in the video game, right? And that's all that simply is. And again, bringing in real world elements like celebrities, like content, and again, using, potentially that as a way to market your business or get more eyeballs to those locations. So that's simply kind of what it is.
There's a concept known as Bored Ape Yacht Club that
Yeah.
is sort of the most famous community, if you will, out there in sort of NFTs, and then the Mutant Ape Yacht Club. Can you talk about what the Bored Ape Yacht Club is as an example of what, like, probably the quintessential, community is in this NFT space?
Yeah, so the Bored Ape Yacht Club is really, PFP profile picture. Each picture has a different ape on it. And essentially, again, we're going back to the core. What is this? This is an NFT. And NFTs at their core are programmable digital assets. And you could really program them to mean or do anything, right? And so in this case, they've created a community around these apes. And there's this, X amount, it was like 10,000 of them. And you can buy, at them and own them, and now you become part of this community. You're able to get access to benefits, in this case, that are pretty exclusive, that are offered to that community. And then, again, back to what I was saying, is the power of the community can enable, all of those people to do things, activate, mobilize, whatever it is they want to do. I mean, there's DAOs that have been put together to go and buy, a golf course, or go and buy, the Constitution, right? So literally you can, bring people together around different goals and missions. And I think the beauty of that, and this is, again, touching on some of the future of the metaverse, which I'd say that DAOs, DeFi, and what I think of as real-world utility, which is our focus at SuperWorld, is really where this is going. And Bored Ape Yacht Club is a great example of people coming together, and they're now valued at $4 billion in less than 1 year, right? And so it really shows you the power of a community that wants to get together and, again, be able to create assets together, create ownership together, and create the, again, the dynamics to do something collectively together.
So I've got two questions here that are the same. Is basically, how does SuperWorld make money?
Yeah, so again, the beauty of a spatial computing platform that enables all of us to, again, utilize Web3 is that there's a multitude of ways to monetize. And so digital commerce is one way. I mean, Fortnite, just in the Web2 world, makes around $400 million a month with just digital accessories, right? So if you can imagine digital accessories in the real world, right? If you can imagine, e-commerce in a spatial environment in the real world anywhere. You can imagine gaming. Pokemon Go as a game, just that game was the fastest company in history to hit $1 billion. Imagine the ability for all of you to create any game. If you own a business, if you own a real estate company and you want people to go to see your properties or go and stay in your properties, if you're talking about Hilton, what if you could create a way for them to, again, activate content or activate kind of ownership of that experience, or gamify that in the real world? And so e-commerce is another way. So I usually just say it's digital commerce, e-commerce, gaming, advertising, data, analytics, and decentralized finance. What if you could utilize finance as well in a decentralized way and be able to access markets without centralized parties? So again, we're building a world. And it's the movement, I always say, is all about how can we all come together as a society, build this world together, and do something very positive for the world. And back to your question, I think that's what's going to enable us to evolve other ways to not only monetize, but to do things that are going to empower all of us. And that's really the excitement that we have around the metaverse, and a lot of people share.
All right, so we got 2 more questions for you. So if we bring this back to real estate for a minute, what do you think about the opportunity to tokenize real estate assets and allow everyday sort of retail investors to buy real estate that they otherwise wouldn't be able to, more similar to the public real estate market?
Yeah, I mean, that's again a tremendous use case of NFTs, to be able to, again, have that frictionless transaction, to be able to collectively be involved in the real world using these virtual assets, and to be able to do that seamlessly, especially when you add, as I mentioned, immersive technologies to go and look at these properties and experience these properties. And some of those things are already happening, right? So people are already buying and selling houses using NFTs. And again, that's going to become more and more mainstream over the next few years. So I think that this concept is already here. It's just not evenly distributed to the rest of the world, and it will be in the next few years.
All right, last question here, because we got to move on. But we got a bunch of students in the audience here today. Thankfully, I'm appreciative of all you coming here today. So, what wisdom, right? You're 22, MBA student, undergrad student graduating, 28-year-old MBA student graduating, knowing what you know about your business now, knowing what you think's going to happen in the future. What wisdom would you give them, or what advice would you give them to think as they sort of move forward in their careers?
Yeah, I think that the world, especially as you look at technology, is always changing, right? And these are rabbit holes. Every one of these things I've mentioned to you, whether it's immersive entertainment, immersive computing, or whether it's Web3 or AI, just as 3 examples, you can go as deep as you want, right? And so I think that it's really important to understand that as we are in this ever-changing world, that first of all, it's really important to find something that you kind of click with, right? Because a lot of these things are long journeys, and it's a long journey to get deeper into them. Not that you only have to do one; you could do many different things. But I always say, find something that you love, because you're going to spend a lot of time going down this journey and these different paths that you're on. And then don't ever feel like anything is too late. You're not too late for whether it's Web3 or AI or any of the other industries, real estate, any of the things that are happening in your world. It really just one step at a time. Enjoy what you're doing. Do what you love. And I think that will make all the difference in the world, because you know what? As things change, you're always, it's not about the end goal. I would not think about what it is that you get to some end, but you really want to enjoy the journey And I think life's a journey. So that's why I have to try to think about for myself is, regardless of what happens, you got to enjoy what you're doing every day and do that, because that's what life's all about. So that's my advice.
Hrish, I love it, man.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you coming up from Miami today to be with us. And I heard a couple things, though. I heard you're going to the Tombs tonight.
Yeah.
I heard you're going to help us get Snoop.
Yeah.
Right? All right, I love it. But so can you all join me in thanking Hrish for coming here? Awesome.